Hi, it's Laura. Independent media is a collaborative project, and you play a critical part in it. This show is made possible by our viewers and listeners, not corporations or advertisers. So join our member supporter honor roll by going to lauraflanders.org/donate to contribute. That's lauraflanders.org/donate. And please stay kind, stay curious, and commit to supporting this no ads, no gimmicks, not all about profit show, again, or for the very first time. Thank you. Now on with this week's show. When Hurricane Helene hit western North Carolina in September of 2024, it came as a shock, dumping historic amounts of rain on a mountainous area unaccustomed to dealing with hurricanes. The water caused rivers to rise and burst their banks.
Alarming new images tonight of the catastrophic damage from Helene.
Asheville, here in Buncombe County, was virtually cut off due to lack of power and cell service and landslides.
Flooding will continue over the next several days, and this is an urgent reminder that it's just not safe to be out there right now.
In the absence of speedy response by either government or business, other players flooded in. Some were survivalists with ties to the extreme right, but more were local community organizations, some relatively new, others with very deep roots. What did they learn? Hurricane Helene was one of the worst storms ever to hit the U.S. But it's not the last crisis headed our way. As we as a country head into an era with fewer services and less help for regular Americans, we wanted to see how the people of western North Carolina had survived Helene. So this July, we flew to Durham, in the center of the state, to pick up activist and author Mab Segrist, whom we found at her home looking at rising water dumped by yet another storm there in her own backyard.
We are in my backyard in Durham, North Carolina. And we are hearing, and I'm watching, the Eno River, which last night overflowed its banks due to a hurricane sweeping through, and it's above river level 24 feet. I haven't seen it this high. I've been here 4 years. I haven't seen it this high, but it's been, according to the news this morning, it's been decades since it was this high.
In 2024, soon after Hurricane Helene, Mab traveled into the affected areas and wrote up a report on community relief efforts for the organization she works with, Blueprint North Carolina.
Everybody in North Carolina knows hurricanes come on the ocean and then they come inland, and they go 5 miles an hour. So you have time to pack everything up and board up your windows and get out of town, and then it hits and you hope you're okay. But for Hurricane Helene, there was an unprecedented situation of a hurricane in the mountains. Can you believe it? Like hurricanes aren't supposed to come in the mountains, and people were surprised, and should have been, when they woke up in the morning and they looked out and saw a neighbor's house floating down the river. So I went up to western North Carolina within a month because I wanted to ask friends I knew and friends I would make up there, like, in an unprecedented situation like this, what do we learn?
Leaving Durham to deal with Tropical Storm Chantal, we drove 3 hours west to Asheville, where we met with RT, a member of a queer collective which in regular times helps its community through throwing benefit parties to buy needed supplies and aid. When Helene hit, they learned new skills, like how to filter water and to distribute it to neighborhoods with none to drink. So we're here?
All right, welcome. Yeah, we are here. Welcome. Follow the pink ribbon. If you see that, you're in the right place. So this is one of the remnants of our water distribution system after Helene. When we lost access to water, using these ICB totes or water buffaloes was how we were able to get drinkable water into our communities.
Incredible. You will learn how to do the filtering and everything.
It was a science project for sure, but we did learn how to do all of that.
I met RT in his group's new community center, the West Asheville Community Hub.
The crux of the storm hit at about 6 a.m., so naturally I was asleep until I heard a loud boom outside, which was a tree falling onto another tree over my truck. So I ran outside in my pajamas and moved my truck out from under this falling tree really quickly. And I was very lucky where I was on high ground. On my street, there is a stream that rose to about 14 feet high. And so, after the storm hit, we had no cell service, we had no power, the water was out. And so the only clues we could get were by just being able to walk around. Trees were down on every direction, you couldn't drive. And so talking to our neighbors was really the first sense that we got that it had been more serious than just a regular storm.
What was your first thought?
My first thought was about my friends and my community members and some of the vulnerable people in our community, people who live near the river, people who, my first thought was are people that I care about okay? We're a very small group of people. There's under 10 of us who were able to come together, and in the first week, we were able to bring $20,000 of supplies back from Central North Carolina to Asheville. And this was before self-service was back. This was long before any government response had happened. This was just us filling up our truck beds and minivans with whatever we could and coming back and, not just coming back to Asheville, going back to Spruce Pine, to Swannanoa, to different affected areas.
There were stories of right-wing activity in the wake of Hurricane Helene. Did you see or experience any of that?
A little bit of it. Anytime there's a strong disaster, hate groups will use it as a reason to mobilize hate. And so you saw groups like the Proud Boys and the Boogaloos and stuff coming out and spreading looting narratives and spreading narratives that would pit people against each other. But at the end of the day, on the ground, that just wasn't the case. At the end of the day, there's groups that have been practicing serving people beans and rice in large amounts for free for a long time, and there's ones who haven't.
You sent out a famous tweet.
Yeah, the way that we went viral after this was from a conversation I had with a group of DJs here in Asheville. And, at the time, it just felt like a benign statement, but it really rings true now. It's just, our systems are broken when 5 gay DJs can bring back 10 grand of supplies before the National Guard does. And, no slight to the National Guard for all of the aid they brought in, because they truly brought in, much more resources on a larger scale than we could eventually, But when it comes to immediate response, it takes the state a long time to mobilize. And that might continue to be true as FEMA gets defunded and as so much disaster response, we just are losing it. And so it's imperative that people fight to keep their disaster response funding. But until then, also, we need to know how to respond ourselves as well.
One of the areas most affected by the storm was the tiny mountain town of Marshall. Janet Kent volunteers with ROAR, Rural Organizing and Resilience, which has operated a local mutual aid hub and free store in Marshall since 2017.
Some things were obvious when the power was out. One shortcoming this event showed us was that a lot of people, even if they have well water, they have electric pumps.
That's right.
And so people not having electricity meant they didn't have water, even if they were out in rural areas where you would think they would have water, even if they were not on a city or water system.
Mountainous Marshall was unprepared for a hurricane, but its people were used to looking after their own, as Janet Kent explained.
Western North Carolina itself is a pretty fascinating place in a lot of ways. It's a place where isolated mountain communities, isolated partially because of the terrain, have grown and developed and have pretty distinct culture ways. And so a lot of mountain music comes from this region. Also some pretty special food ways and herbal medicine ways can be found here. But also this county specifically, Madison County, has an interesting history in that this area during the Civil War was one in which people were resisting the Confederacy and resisting the draft. So mountain folks were like, this plantation system stuff has nothing to do with us. So people resisted the draft here, hid up in the hollers, and there was actually force, like the Confederacy came in and killed quite a few people to force people to go and join the army. This was also known as a pro-union county. It was kind of mixed for the people who did care. A lot of people didn't care, and that's kind of honestly how it is now. People don't think of the politics on the federal level apply to them here because they think they're usually forgotten or ignored, no matter who's in office. That is the general idea. We had a lot of skills developed over time by dealing with just the day-to-day emergencies of living in this country, in this era. And so during the pandemic, we were able to have a food distribution system where we collected food, delivered it to people so they didn't have to go to the grocery store, delivered medications to people, and we had all of that coordination already in place. We also have a really successful firewood aid program where we volunteers, lots of volunteers, chop dozens and dozens and dozens of cords of wood through the winter, and we deliver those to people in need. Anyone, regardless of their beliefs, affiliations, whatever, can call us and we will deliver firewood to your door. Most of the people in Roar have been watching the state abandonment that's been happening for decades, and so we aren't surprised when it's happening, and we're prepared. By Monday, after the storm came on Friday, we had a meeting at our sister organization, which is Holler Harm Reduction, who provide harm reduction supplies to this community. And by Tuesday, we were up and running with donations. Because once we put out the call, because we have a very established network of people around the country, money and resources just came in very quickly.
As the pictures of devastation spread online, Roar and their allies raised almost $1 million in money and supplies, which they were able to distribute fast.
In general, we were able to very directly, very quickly just get the cash out.
And show it can be done.
And you don't need a big bureaucracy to do it. That doesn't mean there's not a need for bureaucracy sometimes. Now, I don't have the resources to completely repair a home when someone doesn't have flood insurance. That is when these state level management systems are helpful, and that's what's missing, and that's the big gap here.
This is Laura Flanders and Friends. 1 year after Hurricane Helene, we're exploring how local mutual aid networks responded with creative, effective strategies to distribute water, medicine, and help communities rebuild when official systems failed. Laura speaks with community activists to hear the lessons to be learned for the future. From the tiny mountain town of Marshall, one of the hardest hit areas, we just heard from Janet Kent, a member of Rural Organizing and Resilience, or ROAR. Next, we head to the banks of the Oconaluftee Island Park in Cherokee, where Laura speaks with Brooklyn Brown, a reporter for the local paper, the Cherokee One Feather. You can watch the special investigative report at lauraflanders.org. And while you're there, please take a moment to subscribe to our newsletter to receive information on all of our web exclusives, including the free podcast of a bonus conversation with 2 additional community organizers, Ayatunde Dixon and Ty Little, recorded live at WPVM in Asheville, North Carolina. Now back to our special report.
Cherokee is a river town in the ancestral homeland of the Eastern Band of Cherokee, a federally recognized tribe in the Great Smoky Mountains.
We are at the Island Park in Cherokee, which was one of the more affected areas of Cherokee during the hurricane. Like, all you could see was the top of the pavilion. And yeah, this was probably our most dangerous flood zone was here, for sure.
Brooklyn Brown is a reporter for the local paper, the Cherokee One Feather, which became an important source of news.
One of the major core values of Cherokee society is called Gadugi. There's not really an easy translation to English for that. It really just means community togetherness, helping when you can, rallying together when you can. Gadugi is how we have survived all of these instances in American history where you wouldn't think we would be able to survive. And it happened again this time around with the hurricane. We rallied together and put together our resources to help neighboring communities. Cherokee Water and Sewer, they would take trips and do boots on the ground trips in places like Marshall to help with their water infrastructure. It was very important that local news media in Western North Carolina, and particularly the Cherokee One Feather, was able to tell the human interest story, and not in a way that was sensationalizing what was happening. We were talking to the people that were staying in hotels because they had just lost everything and didn't know where they were going to get their next meal or their medicine. Talk to those people. Those are the people that their stories need to be told.
The Cherokee One Feather collaborated with other media in the region to counter rumors and misinformation.
The Smoky Mountain News, Smoky Mountain Times, Silver Herald, Graham Star, a lot of our local newspapers, we always collaborate when we can. And again, I think it just speaks to that neighborly connection. And I think that's why, even though this tragedy struck Western North Carolina, it was just like almost automatic that all of these communities were coming together to help each other. It was instantaneous, and news media included. It was like everyone was on the same team, and you don't see that a lot in America or in the world anymore.
Hurricanes cause massive displacement, especially among those already living in tenuous circumstances. In Asheville, the organization La Milpa works with exactly those people, many of whom have roots in other countries.
I am Alan Luis Ramirez. Currently, I'm the director of our House of Mutual Aid, La Casa de Apoyo Mutuo, which was born after Hurricane Helene came and was a response to the crisis of the hurricane through redistributing food, water, medicine, and now it still exists as we have our weekly market and a lot of ways that we collaborate with the community to bring donations to the neighborhood and actually a lot of areas of Asheville.
How are people doing, and how would you describe the people that you work with and the people in this community?
I think we are resilient because we are still doing a lot of the things that the government could never do for us. We were doing that before and we're still doing it after. There's so much need that was existing in this neighborhood before our experience with the hurricane, and that just kind of leveled it up by 10. We didn't have a way to flush our own toilets. We didn't have a way to clean ourselves. The way it impacted us was horrible. I've never experienced a hurricane, but it's been super rainy lately, and I could tell within myself and my community, we're constantly like triggered, and I don't use that word lightly, but we lost our power for almost 2 months. We had no water for the same amount of time. Thank God for our cooperative because we had a space to be in.
For the past 20 years, La Milpa has been building community wealth through a creative ecosystem of cooperative ownership and small business development. La Milpa's projects currently include a free market, a language co-op, a childcare co-op, and several trailer home cooperatives, as well as a repair co-op that repairs and maintains homes.
We started with each person giving $1,000. With 30 people, that's $30,000. And we were able to put a deposit on this building that we're in.
In Asheville, gentrification is accelerating as landlords use the disruption caused by the hurricane to evict low-income tenants, and developers use insurance and disaster recovery money to build higher-end homes. La Milpa's network is pooling resources to buy affordable mobile home parks and run them as cooperatives. At present, they have over 60 units, soon to be many more. A short drive away up one of the steep, leafy hills behind La Milpa's offices, Alain took me to the organization's most recently acquired mobile home park. On the day I arrived, it was basking in summer sunlight, but it showed the signs of the hurricane's damage and prompted memories of how the community had worked together in the disaster.
So what's this here?
So this is where our neighborhood's well lives, and you should have seen it during the hurricane. This yard, our neighbors were gracious enough to let us use their yard for our solar generator to be installed, and we were able to pump water from the well into these large totes and started distributing thousands of gallons of water across different mobile home park neighborhoods in Emma.
How much did it cost for the co-op to purchase this property?
The landlord was wanting to sell both together or not at all, so that was a good opportunity for us to buy.
Sure.
And this property is around 8 acres, has 26 units on it, and was around $800,000. So 800,000 divided by 26 makes it around like a 35,000 membership worth or value. So that's pretty affordable.
I mean, that amount of money, we've heard millions passing through relief organizations in the context of Hurricane Helene. Here, you were able to have that amount of money stay here and invest for the future.
Yeah,
It's a very different approach to relief.
100%. I think that's like one way that we build solidarity in our neighborhood is the same need of housing. So it's super interesting because there may be totally different beliefs in one neighborhood, so many different types of experiences, backgrounds. Class, I think we can all claim that we're working class, but what unites us is this need for housing and this love for where we live.
Towns like Marshall have yet to see any systemic help.
Janet Kent, Rural Organizing and Resilience member.
When you see the fact that here people's homes are not being rebuilt, no housing has come in for people who lost their homes, very few people were able to access disaster relief money that had been earmarked for this disaster at this point. Yet we just saw ICE's budget raised. I actually can't remember the number, it was too big for me to understand. So there is money, there is no concern over the debt, but the money is being allocated for militarized operations, policing neighbors, and policing all kinds of people who are in these disaster zones as well and need support. But I think in the moments when we actually are able to organize together in the wake of a disaster, we see what is possible. Now, we also burn out over time when we don't rest, but we do see what's possible when we get to actually turn our attention towards community and not towards survival.
Mab Segrist, Blueprint NC and author of the special report, Hurricane in the Mountains, What We Can Learn from Western North Carolina.
In the past year, it's become very clear that we as a country are less prepared than we were a year ago for unprecedented events because, number one, enough people don't believe in climate change, especially people who are in authority to do something about it. The weather services have been severely cut, who would alert folks on the ground that, oh, by the way, before 3 a.m, you need to get your children out so they won't be swept away, or what's going to happen to FEMA. And I mean, this country is just upside down.
Brooklyn Brown, East Band of Cherokee, reporter for the Cherokee One Feather newspaper.
There are stereotypes out there of Appalachian people and indigenous people, that we are helpless, that we depend on the government, that we are not intelligent. And so this tragedy was a force. It forced people to see us for who we are, that we're resourceful, intelligent, strong, and that community is what's most important. We're living in a society and a climate where in capitalistic society, community is not that important. And when tragedy struck and all we had was each other, that's what we clung to, was community. Recently, there was a tornado outbreak in Kentucky, and particularly in London and Somerset, Kentucky, there was a F4 tornado that came through and was fatal. And the people that were affected, particularly Don Franklin Auto Group, were people that provided relief to us during the hurricane. And so Cherokee Indian Police Department took a trailer to Kentucky and sort of returned the favor. And that showed me that tragedies are still happening and are going to happen. But this time around, especially with that response from us to Kentucky, the reason that I am not as worried is because we have each other. And I'm I'm not afraid because there's something about this community in particular where we're not going to fall apart.
RT.
You know, it's incredible the kinds of connections that we were able to make with each other, you know, and I think that there's something really beautiful about the way that people come together after a disaster, because our differences are put aside when we all have the same needs that need to get met. It doesn't matter what kind of person you are, what your gender is, what your hair color is, what your, you know, it's all about us working together to provide for each other. And so I think that the kind of coalitions and connections that we build in the face of disaster are going to benefit us for a long time. You know, you might be the most homophobic person in the world, but you can't deny that after the storm, you know, people were standing side by side with each other to provide for each other. And so, you know, we made a lot of unlikely connections, and it doesn't matter if you know, came from one side of the tracks to the other. What mattered at the end of the day was we need to work together, because there's a lady at the top of the mountain who needs her insulin, and you have an ATV and I have a cooler full of insulin. So it doesn't matter who you voted for. We need to work together for this.
When we returned to Durham, we found out that the waters had kept on rising and that some 80 people had to be rescued from that Eno River that passes below Mab Segrist's house. The hurricanes keep on coming. That's one of the lessons from here. Be they meteorological or political, we need to be awake, not to say woke, to the weaknesses and the fragilities in our community. The other lesson I'm learning from Western North Carolina is that community doesn't just happen. It has to be built. In Marshall, every Friday for decades, they held parties and played music and danced at the railroad depot. Now, that building welcomed everyone, be they whoever they loved, whoever they prayed to, even whoever they voted for. It was a welcoming place that was washed away by Hurricane Helene. But it'll be rebuilt, and the music's already playing elsewhere. The final lesson I'm learning from here is that those people and places that have been most ignored, most marginalized, and forgotten longest may, in fact, be the people who know best how to survive. So check out your community. For Laura Flanders and friends, I'm Laura. Stay kind, stay curious. Till the next time, from Asheville, North Carolina, thanks for joining us.
For more information on this episode, check out our show notes posted for free at patreon.com/Laura Flanders and Friends. And we invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel to watch the premiere of each week's show and chat in real time with Laura. The premiere now airs on Fridays at 5 p.m. Eastern. Thanks to our member supporters, this show remains free to millions on public TV, community radio, and as a podcast. Not a member yet? Make a one-time donation or make it monthly at lauraflanders.org.
This show is produced by yours truly, Laura Flanders, along with Sabrina Artel, Jeremiah Cothran, Veronica Delgado, Jeanette Hernandez, Jeannie Hopper, Sarah Miller, Nat Needham, David Neumann, and Rory O'Connor.
Thanks for joining us.